Okay, so back in the early days of my graphic design career, when we were still learning the new softwares, Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign, I learned about the pen tool through Photoshop, and that was a horrible idea. Well, I didn't know it at the time, but I didn't get it. It was one of the tools that I avoided the most. I hated it. I considered that learning these softwares were not for me at one point because of this, because of that tool, because of the pen tool. However, I was lucky enough to take a class with Rudy Gardia, legendary Illustrator teacher, and he gave us 3 tips, and those tips changed forever the way that I look at the pen tool now. And it's because of those tips that I am not afraid to use the pen tool, and I consider myself to be rather good. And when I can, I would choose the pen tool instead of any other tool. So I just want to make this video to share those 3 tips. And the first tip is that the pen tool is like a shoelace. If you know how to tie your shoes, you know how to use the pen tool. What? It's the same thing but backwards. So if you know how to set the loop on your shoe and make it as big as you want, you could do the same thing with the pen tool but backwards. As we go through the video, I'll explain more. Second tip, and this should probably be a rule, and this would probably also is the most important thing. You start your anchor point at the beginning of a curve and you end it at the end of a curve. You start at the beginning and you end it at the end of a curve. This is the most helpful, most precise thing you could do with the pen tool. Start at the beginning of the curve, end at the end of the curve. And I'll talk about it more in the video. Lastly, and this is just a pro tip, is that you shouldn't be afraid to fix it. You shouldn't be afraid to fix your path. You should always go in and try to fix it, try to make it perfect, because at the end of the day, the pen tool is a precision tool. It gives you all the precision that you will need for your design. So come on, let's go. Okay, so we're here inside of Illustrator, everybody's favorite lately. Now, by the way, this also works in Affinity Designer 2. All the tips that I'm going to give you are the same for Affinity Designer 2. So if you are inside of Illustrator, and if this is your first rodeo with the pen tool, you don't know anything else, then what I want you to do is just open it up and then start doodling like this. Once you finish doodling, I want you to play around with the different buttons, see what Alt does, see what Control does, see what Command does on if you're on Mac, and see what Shift does to each one of these anchor points, so you could start getting familiar with what everything does and how the pen tool behaves. If this is not your first rodeo, then you could skip ahead to where I start. The more you familiarize yourself with the quirks the pen tool does, the better you'll do and the less afraid of it you'll be. Okay, so we're here in front of our lovely subjects. It's always good to name your layers. Please use the layers on your Illustrator like as if you have unlimited layers. The cleaner and more organized your workspace is, the less of a headache you're going to have when it comes to cleaning up, and you're always going to clean up. So I like to put this in opacity 27 to go on top of it, to trace over. One of the things that I like to do right out of the gate is take off any filling inside my path. So you do this by taking off the filling. If you want to, you could put a color on your path. I prefer not to do it. That way I'm more exact on on what I'm trying to do. But if you're not trying to be exact and you really need to see the path, then go ahead and put a stroke in the path. So here's what I was talking about earlier. This is the shape. It has curves, and each one of these curves has a beginning and an end. If you have a circle, then it has 4 beginnings and 4 ends. So you want to do it at the beginning of a curve, that's one anchor point, and end at the end of a curve. Don't try to overdo it. It's okay to underdo it. If you overdo it, you're gonna have a hard time controlling these curves, and that's what one of the frustrating parts that people come across is when they try to overdo the curve. Of course, if you think about it, you know, if you really want to push it, one circle is one full curve. But you know, we have to set limits of where does a curve starts and where does it end. So let's take a circle for example. A circle is one giant curve, but for this strategy to work, you're going to have 4 anchor points in one circle, and that's how you're going to treat everything. That everything has a beginning and an end. Don't try to overdo it, and as long as you don't try to overdo it and you're placing the anchor points at the beginning of a curve and at the end of a curve, you're going to have a fantastic time learning this. It's really just gonna be so intuitive. Now back to the first thing I was saying, the pen tool is really like a shoelace. So when you place your anchor, to make the curve a certain length, to make it bigger or smaller, after you click, you simply pull on the little handles backwards, like if you're gonna tie your shoelace, and this would actually make the length of the curve as long as you want or as short as you want. You can manipulate your anchors by pressing Command on a Mac or Control on a PC, and you can manipulate the handles by pressing Alt, and you can move the handles however you want. Not to mention that it is always great to zoom in to a comfortable level. If you're not comfortable to what you're looking at or what you're seeing, always zoom in or zoom out, however and how many times you want. Notice how this circle is not a full or complete circle or a correct circle per se to say something, but we are going to again place our angle point at the beginning of the curve and at the end of a curve. You know, don't try to overdo it ever, and it's fine. You'll be fine. One of the great things about learning it to do it this way is that you won't ever be lazy to use the pen tool again. You'll grab the pen tool and use it as your first option rather than try looking for shortcuts, because the pen tool is your shortcut. So I've said this before, there is 1,000 ways to do the same thing on Illustrator and Photoshop, but learning how to do it the correct way allows you to do it a better way in the future. Shortcuts are not really the correct way. So, and for example, in this shape, there's an easy way to doing this. You know, I could just go in the middle of the line and expand the curve, but I guess I like pain and suffering.
Pain, suffering.
I'm just kidding. If I had done it the other way, putting a line through the middle of this and then expanding the stroke, I would probably have a harder time trying to replicate the exact shape. So I opted for the one that has 0 fails at the end. So to recap, you start at the beginning of a curve and you end at the end of a curve. You can think about the pen tool as acting like a shoelace in reverse. And if you see something you don't like, you should fix it. Always fix it. Don't be afraid to go back and fix it. This is what the pen tool was made for, so you could get precision. So, you know, like me, for example, here I saw something I don't like and I told myself the same thing.
Fix it.
And you know, you don't have to use just like a single tool. You could use all the tools at your disposition to fix something. For example, you could use this smooth tool right here that's underneath the shape tool to fix the things you don't like. You know, not everything has to be 100% manual. You could use the tools at your disposition, so long as at the end of the day you can tell me and anybody to their faces that you were actually you actually did a perfect job, and then you actually fixed it like this.
It's fixed.
Anyway, just sharing what I know. Hopefully somebody finds this video useful. Till the next one. Anyway, so before I go, I just want to give a quick shout out to my own website. You come here for free tools for graphic designers. All of these tools you see here are free. It's just a combination of things that I find useful for graphic designers and they could really take advantage of. Everything's free. Just come to DesignSky /free resources.